Long ago there was a great wedding feast. Peleus, a brave hero, was marrying Thetis. Thetis was a beautiful sea nymph. All the gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus were invited. They came with gifts and good wishes. Music played and everyone was happy. Laughter filled the air. But one goddess was forgotten, or perhaps she was not wanted. Her name was Eris, and she was the goddess of discord, of arguments and trouble. She always brought unhappiness wherever she went. Eris was very angry. She was angry that she was not invited to the joyful wedding, so she planned a cruel trick. She wanted to spoil the happiness of the other gods. She took a beautiful golden apple. On this apple she wrote the words, "For the fairest." Then, unseen by anyone, she rolled the lovely shining apple into the middle of the feasting gods. The apple gleamed among the wedding gifts. It looked very special. It was a dangerous gift full of future sorrow. 3 powerful goddesses saw the golden apple, each one wanted it for herself. There was Hera, the queen of the gods. She was the wife of Zeus, the mighty king of all gods. Then there was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. She was strong and clever. And there was Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. She was known everywhere for her loveliness. They argued about who was the fairest. "The apple is for me!" each one cried. The argument grew loud and bitter. Zeus, the king of the gods, heard their angry voices. He did not want to choose between them. He knew that whoever he did not choose would be angry with him. So, he thought of a plan. He said that a mortal man must decide. This man was Paris. Paris was a prince of the great city of Troy, but he was living as a shepherd on Mount Ida. He was known to be fair. The 3 goddesses would go to him. He would look at them and decide who was the fairest of all. The 3 goddesses went down to Mount Ida. They found Paris tending his sheep. He was a young man, handsome and strong. Hermes, the messenger god, led them to him. Paris was surprised to see the great goddesses. Hermes explained why they had come. He showed Paris the golden apple. "You must choose who is the fairest," Hermes said. Paris felt nervous. He knew this was an important choice. Each goddess hoped he would choose her. They began to offer him wonderful gifts. Hera, queen of the gods, spoke first. She promised Paris great power. "Choose me," she said, "and I will make you a mighty king. You will rule over vast lands and many people. All of Asia will be yours to command." Paris listened carefully. Power was a tempting gift. Next, Athena, the wise goddess, made her offer. "If you say I am the fairest," she promised, "I will give you great wisdom. I will also give you victory in every battle you fight. You will be known as the wisest and bravest of men." Then, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, stepped forward. She smiled sweetly at Paris. Her voice was like music. "Paris," she said softly, "choose me, and I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world. She will be your wife." Aphrodite did not offer kingdoms or wisdom. She offered love. Paris looked at the 3 goddesses. He thought about their promises. Power was good, wisdom was good, but the love of the most beautiful woman seemed best of all to him. He gave the golden apple to Aphrodite. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen. She lived in Sparta, a kingdom in Greece. Helen was a queen. She was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Aphrodite had not mentioned this small problem, but Aphrodite kept her promise to Paris. She helped him travel to Sparta. King Menelaus welcomed Paris as a guest, but Paris did a terrible thing. He betrayed Menelaus's kindness. He took Helen away from Sparta. He sailed with her back to his home city of Troy. Some stories say Helen went willingly, charmed by Paris. Others say Paris stole her away against her will. When King Menelaus found Helen gone, he was filled with rage and shame. His wife had been taken. His honor as a host had been destroyed by Paris. He went to his brother Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the king of Mycenae, a rich and powerful city. He was the most powerful king in all of Greece. Menelaus told him what Paris had done. He asked for Agamemnon's help to bring Helen back. Agamemnon listened to his brother's sorrowful story. He agreed to help. He saw a chance for glory and for riches from Troy. Many years before, Helen had many suitors. They were all kings and princes of Greece. Her father made them all swear an oath. They promised to protect Helen's marriage, whoever she chose. They swore to defend her husband's honor. Now Menelaus called upon them to remember their promise. Agamemnon sent messengers to all these kings and heroes. He told them to gather their armies and their ships. They must sail to Troy. They must fight to bring Helen back and punish Paris and the Trojans for this insult. Great heroes answered the call to war. There was Achilles, the son of Peleus and Thetis. He was the greatest warrior in the world. His mother knew he would die if he went to Troy, but he chose glory. There was Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca. He was known for his cunning mind and wise counsel. Ajax the Great came, a giant of a man, strong and fearless. Diomedes, a brave and skilled fighter, also joined. Many other famous warriors and their men prepared for the long journey. They came from all corners of Greece. 1,000 black ships gathered at Aulis, a port in Greece. The sails were ready. The men were eager for battle. But there was no wind. The sea was calm and still. The ships could not sail to Troy. The prophet Calchas told them why. The goddess Artemis was angry. She was angry with Agamemnon for killing one of her sacred deer. She demanded a sacrifice to calm her anger. Agamemnon had to make a terrible choice. He had to sacrifice his own daughter Iphigenia so the winds would blow. This brought great sorrow, but the fleet needed to sail. The Greek ships finally reached the shores of Troy. The city of Troy stood strong and proud. It had high, thick walls built by the gods Apollo and Poseidon. The Trojans were brave people. They were ready to defend their city, their king, and their prince, Paris. King Priam was the old and wise ruler of Troy. His son Hector was their greatest warrior. He was noble and courageous. The Trojans looked down from their walls at the Greek army camped on the beach. They knew a long and bitter struggle was ahead. For 9 long years the war went on. The Greeks could not break through Troy's mighty walls. The Trojans could not drive the Greeks away from their shores. Many fierce battles were fought on the wide plain between the city and the sea. Swords clashed against shields, spears flew through the air, chariots thundered across the dusty ground. Brave men on both sides showed great courage, but neither the Greeks nor the Trojans could win a final victory. The war seemed endless. Many men died far from their homes. The Greek army was large. They needed food and supplies. They raided nearby towns and islands. They took food, animals, and sometimes treasure. This made the people in those lands suffer too. Inside Troy, life was also very hard. Food became scarce. People lived in fear of the next attack. The Trojan men fought bravely every day to protect their families and their homes. The women and children watched from the walls. They prayed for an end to the terrible war. They longed for peace. Heroes on both sides became famous for their brave deeds. They also suffered terrible losses. Friends died in battle. Brothers were killed. The fields around Troy became soaked with blood. The river Scamander sometimes ran red. The gods on Mount Olympus watched the war. They were not just watching, they often took part in the fighting. They helped their favorite heroes. They made the war even more complicated and dangerous. The fate of Troy hung in the balance for many long years. The gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus were deeply involved in the Trojan War. They did not stay neutral. Each of them had their own reasons for supporting either the Greeks or the Trojans, and their interference often, changed the course of battles. Hera, queen of the gods, and Athena, goddess of wisdom, strongly supported the Greeks. They had not forgotten Paris's judgment. He had chosen Aphrodite as the fairest. So, Hera and Athena wanted Troy to be destroyed, and they often appeared to Greek heroes, giving them strength or advice. Aphrodite, who had won the Golden Apple, naturally helped Paris and the Trojans. She protected Paris in battle and even saved him when he was in danger. Ares, the god of war, loved fighting and bloodshed, and he usually sided with the Trojans, fighting alongside Hector. Apollo, the god of archery, music, and prophecy, was also a powerful ally of Troy. He sent a deadly plague into the Greek camp when Agamemnon angered one of his priests, and this plague killed many Greek soldiers. Apollo also guided Paris's arrow that would later wound Achilles. Poseidon, the god of the sea, had helped build the walls of Troy long ago, but King Laomedon, Priam's father, had cheated him of his payment. So, Poseidon sometimes helped the Greeks by causing earthquakes to shake Troy or by raising storms to trouble the Trojan ships. However, he was also unpredictable. Sometimes he seemed to favor one side then the other. The moods of the gods were as changing as the sea itself, and their quarrels and alliances mirrored the struggles of the mortals below. Zeus, the king of all gods, tried to stay above the fighting. He wanted fate to run its course, but even he was swayed by prayers or by the requests of other gods, especially his wife Hera. Sometimes he would tilt the scales of war in favor of the Greeks, while at other times he would allow the Trojans to have success. He sent dreams and omens, and he threw his thunderbolts to show his power. The lives of the heroes and soldiers were like pieces in a great game played by the powerful and often cruel gods. In the 10th year of the war, a bitter quarrel broke out in the Greek camp. Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior, argued fiercely with Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek army. Agamemnon had taken a captive woman named Chryseis. Her father was a priest of Apollo. When Agamemnon refused to return her, Apollo sent a plague. Agamemnon finally agreed to return Chryseis, but then he took Achilles' war prize, a woman named Briseis, to show his power. Achilles was filled with terrible anger and shame. He declared he would no longer fight for Agamemnon. Achilles withdrew to his tent by the sea. He refused to join the battles. Without their best warrior, the Greeks began to suffer heavy losses. The Trojans, led by the brave Hector, fought with new courage. They pushed the Greeks back from the plains of Troy. They drove them all the way to their ships on the beach. Hector and his men even set fire to some of the Greek ships. The Greeks were desperate. They begged Achilles to return to the fight, but Achilles' anger was too strong. He would not listen. Patroclus was Achilles' closest friend, dearer to him than a brother. He could not bear to see the Greeks defeated. He begged Achilles to let him wear Achilles' famous armor. He hoped the sight of the armor would scare the Trojans. Achilles agreed, but warned Patroclus not to go too near the walls of Troy. Patroclus charged into battle wearing Achilles' armor. He fought bravely and pushed the Trojans back, but he went too far. Hector met him in battle. Hector, helped by the god Apollo, killed Patroclus. When Achilles heard that Patroclus was dead, his grief was immense. His anger at Agamemnon was replaced by a burning desire for revenge against Hector. His mother, Thetis, brought him new armor made by the god Hephaestus. Achilles returned to the battlefield like a storm. He killed many Trojans, searching for Hector. Finally, they met outside the walls of Troy. They fought a long and terrible duel. Achilles was stronger and more skilled. He killed Hector. Then, in his mad grief and rage, Achilles tied Hector's body to his chariot. He dragged it in the dust around the city walls 3 times. Even after Hector's death, the city of Troy did not fall. The Trojans grieved for their hero, but they continued to defend their city. New allies came to help them. The war dragged on. The Greeks were tired. They had been away from their homes for 10 long years. Many brave men had died. They began to lose hope of ever capturing the strong city of Troy by force. They needed a new plan. They needed something clever, not just strong arms and sharp spears. The gods were still influencing events, but a human mind conceived the final trick. Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, was known for his cunning and his clever ideas. He thought of a daring plan to trick the Trojans. The Greeks would build a giant horse out of wood. It would be hollow inside. A group of their best warriors would hide inside the belly of this huge horse. The rest of the Greek army would pretend to give up. They would burn their camp. They would sail away in their ships as if they were going home. They would leave the wooden horse on the beach as a supposed offering to the gods. The plan was put into action. Epeus, a skilled craftsman, supervised the building of the enormous wooden horse. It was truly a magnificent and strange sight. When it was ready, Odysseus and other brave warriors, including Menelaus and Diomedes, climbed inside. They were cramped and nervous, waiting in the dark. The rest of the Greek army burned their tents. They launched their ships and sailed away, but they did not go far. They hid behind a nearby island called Tenedos. They waited for a signal. One Greek soldier named Sinon was left behind. He was part of Odysseus's plan. He would pretend to be a deserter. He would allow the Trojans to capture him. Then, he would tell them a carefully prepared story. He would say that the Greeks had truly given up. He would explain that the wooden horse was a sacred offering to the goddess Athena. He would claim that if the Trojans brought the horse into their city, Troy would be protected by Athena and become unconquerable. His task was to convince the Trojans to bring their own doom inside their walls. The Trojans woke up the next morning. They saw the Greek camp empty and smoking. The 1,000 black ships were gone from the sea. They could not believe their eyes. They thought the long, terrible war was finally over. They rushed out onto the plain. They found the giant wooden horse standing there. It was huge and silent. They wondered what it meant. Some were suspicious, others were filled with joy. They dragged Sinon, the Greek left behind before King Priam. Sinon told his clever lies with tears in his eyes. Laocoon, a priest of Apollo, did not trust Sinon's story. He did not trust the horse. "I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts," he warned the Trojans. He threw his spear at the horse's side. A hollow sound came from within. Just then, a terrible omen occurred. 2 giant sea serpents rose from the waves. They slithered across the beach. They attacked Laocoon and his 2 young sons. The serpents crushed them to death. The Trojans were horrified. They believed this was a sign from the gods. They thought Laocoon had been punished for disrespecting the sacred offering to Athena. Convinced by Sinon's lies and the terrible fate of Laocoon, The Trojans decided to bring the horse into their city. It was so big they had to break down part of their famous wall to get it inside. They pulled the great wooden horse through the gap. They celebrated their victory with feasting and drinking. They danced and sang, believing peace had come at last. Night fell upon the joyful, unsuspecting city. Troy slept, tired from its celebrations, unaware of the danger hidden within the horse and waiting just offshore. In the dead of night, while Troy was quiet, Sinon crept to the wooden horse. He gave the signal. The hidden Greek warriors led by Odysseus climbed out of the horse's belly. They were silent and deadly. They killed the sleeping guards at the city gates. They opened the great gates wide. Then they lit a beacon. This was the signal for the Greek fleet hidden behind the island to return. The Greek army poured into the unsuspecting city. Troy awoke to screams, the clash of swords, and the smell of fire. The final destruction had begun. The sack of Troy was brutal and complete. The Greek soldiers, after 10 years of frustration and loss, showed little mercy. They rampaged through the city streets. Houses were set on fire. Temples were looted and destroyed. King Priam, the old king of Troy, was killed at his own altar. Trojan men were slaughtered. The women and children were taken as slaves. Hector's young son Astyanax was thrown from the city walls to his death. Helen, the cause of the war, was found and returned to her husband Menelaus. Troy, once a proud and mighty city, was reduced to smoking ruins. With Troy destroyed, the victorious Greek heroes prepared for their long-awaited journey home. They loaded their ships with treasure and with their captive Trojan women. But their voyages were not easy. The gods had not forgotten the violence and sacrilege committed during the sack of Troy. Many of the Greek leaders had angered the gods. Poseidon, god of the sea, made their journeys perilous. Storms scattered their fleets. Many ships were wrecked. Many heroes faced new dangers and hardships before they saw their homes again, if they ever did. Odysseus, the clever king who devised the Trojan horse, endured the longest and most difficult journey of all. He wandered the seas for another 10 years. He faced monsters like the Cyclops and the enchantress Circe. He lost all his men and all his ships. His adventures became another famous story, the Odyssey. Agamemnon, the leader of the Greeks, reached his home in Mycenae, but he was murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and her lover. Other heroes met similar tragic fates. The glory of victory was often followed by sorrow. The Trojan War was a conflict of epic scale. It brought untold suffering to both Greeks and Trojans. It was a story of great courage and terrible cruelty, of love and betrayal, of fate and the power of the gods. The tales of its heroes like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus have been told and retold for thousands of years. They speak to us still about the nature of war, the price of glory, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The ruins of Troy, discovered by archaeologists, remind us that behind the myth lies a real story of a city and its tragic end.